Awesome, man. Well, let's get into it. So
All right.
I am joined today by Michael Bastron. Did I say
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
it.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So just to give people a little bit of a background, I think we met. I mean, we basically started following each other on like social media on
Yeah,
Instagram.
social media. Yeah.
And I liked a lot of the stuff that like you posted. I mean, I like your kind of philosophy and take on like rehab and training and stuff. And so I feel like we've had like a bunch of like conversations virtually, but we've never really kind of sat
Yeah.
down and hashed it out. So
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I want to get you on here, kind of have more of an in-depth conversation and maybe talk about some of the things that we've kind of touched on.
Yeah. Awesome.
So let's go ahead and start. Let's give people a little bit of background about you. So kind of where did you start in terms of like weightlifting and what are you kind of currently up to?
So I started weightlifting. So I was getting out of the military as an infantry marine. My body was like pretty wrecked just from like infantry life and just generally being like an idiot, like 20-year-old, you know? So
Mm,
I was like big into like kind of like powerlifting adjacent kind of training. So I was kind of trying to like rebuild my body as I was kind of getting out. And say what you will about this book. I read what is it? Supple Leopard.
oh, yes.
Yeah. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, which I mean, good and bad from that. But part of that was me trying to kind of get into weightlifting and kind of, I think he said something about like kind of having kind of more movement options or something like that, and being able to do more things. So I tried to kind of be able to weightlift. I couldn't like overhead squat with an empty bar. I was just like completely
Mm,
stiff. So I went to like a local CrossFit gym that had like a barbell club going on, and so I started doing that as well as like running kind of like this some program I found online for weightlifting. It was like this like hybrid like weightlifting powerlifting program. Did that for a while. Got like not, I mean, less bad, I guess. And then I got out of the military, came back to Texas, where I am now, and kept kind of weightlifting. And I said I wanted to just run like a 12-week cycle to kind of just get better at weightlifting, so I could just focus on that. So I did that and never really went back. And then uh, years later, I ended up getting my USAW Level I, and then now I now have the Level 2. I'm finishing up my Bachelor's in Kinesiology. I just took the CSCS not too long ago. And then I also run a small barbell club out of a local CrossFit gym actually. And got my level 2 from Yannick Camargo, which is pretty cool. And
oh,
yeah,
nice.
so that's where I am now.
Awesome. Awesome, man. And you are, I think from our conversation, I think I remember you saying that you were potentially interested in going into PT. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be applying for athletic master's in athletic training programs. I don't think I have the GPA for PT school, but I can still kind of get into that world from there. So yeah, that's the plan right now.
okay. So you would
But
go, so you do so you said masters of athletic training and then from
yep,
there potentially into PT school or
potentially in a PT school. I'm also looking at like roles as like an athletic trainer or strength and conditioning for the military. Like that would be
oh,
a
nice.
pretty good field to get into. And then you could
Yeah.
also possibly do private practice as an athletic trainer and kind of do like a kind of like kind of what you do, kind of like
Hmm.
coaching athletes, and then like a little bit of rehab, whatever my scope would allow. But
Yeah.
and then yeah, PT school is always kind of on the board there. Something I might revisit later on.
Yeah, for sure. And my experience with it is I didn't have to go to PT school to do what I do today, right? Like even the
Right,
rehab
right,
stuff, I don't do any hands-on, I don't do like manual stuff, I don't bill insurance. And so
right.
like really I could do everything that I do without going to PT school. But PT school did I think the biggest value in PT school for me was connecting me with smart people in the rehab space and like connecting me with like mentors because like the information you learn in PT school is kind of BS, to be honest. It's totally
Yeah.
outdated, like very mechanical
Mm-hmm.
based stuff. But it did connect me with like very smart people who impacted like the way that I view pain and injury and kind of how I
Mm-hmm.
treat it. So awesome, man. So you touched on the supple leopard, man. That was so when I was first getting into CrossFit in 2013, I bought that book and I was
Mm-hmm.
like so bought in. I was like,
Yeah, same.
like
Yep.
this is the way. And then
Need way out.
Yeah. And then I remember I would spend like 30 minutes before my workouts doing like all that shit. Cause in the book he's like, you need to hit every muscle and
Right. Yeah.
joint,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
That's
need to,
right. Yeah. Like his little like flows and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I was
yeah.
the same way. Yeah.
So you need to
Power
be
warm
like,
up. Yep.
yep, mobilizing and smashing
Hmm.
all this stuff. And then
Oh,
when I got in,
I bought all those little mobility tools too.
oh
His
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
with like
The,
the peanut and all that.
the
Yeah.
special ball and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And then I got into PT school and you start to look at the evidence and I looked back and I was like, what the what the fuck? Like I took all this stuff at like this guy's a PT, he knows what he's
Uh-huh.
talking about. This is law. And then you start to look back and you're like, wow, none of this is actually evidence-based.
Uh-huh.
There's no rule that says that you need to mobilize joints and like smash and like do all this stuff that he was
Hmm.
saying. And I've gone kind of back and forth with him specifically, Kelly Surratt, because
Oh, yeah.
the thing that I get big time guru vibes from him,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Where
Yeah.
it's like he's like, oh, I have the way, I have the secret, like you know, you have to listen to like the way that I do things, and if you don't,
Hmm.
then you're not like optimizing performance. And anyone that does that, I'm very skeptical of anyone that kind of has that like guru vibe. But I mean, some of the stuff can be, you know, useful and beneficial. I think it's all just a matter of kind of like how you express and how you sell, like the interventions that you're using.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like had both really good and bad effects. I think he's gotten a lot of people into training, which is like including
Yeah,
myself. I think he's brought me into weightlifting. So like that's definitely beneficial. Giving people some like strategies to kind of manage their pain, but yeah, also promoted a lot of non-evidence based, almost like a lot of like kind of almost nocivic narratives
yeah,
surrounding that kind of thing. So yeah, good and bad with him, as with
yeah,
most things, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. Exactly,
Because I mean
exactly.
that's what everybody says about every all the gurus is like, well, they're doing like they're getting people eating better, they're getting people healthier, they're getting people training. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like the go to defense, I feel
yeah.
like.
I push back against anyone that like pretends to have all the answers because
Mm,
especially in the world of like pain management, like rehab, we don't know shit to be completely
right.
honest when it comes to like
Yeah.
you know, like etiology of pain and like, do you follow Greg Lyman?
Yeah, I love him. Yeah, he's
Okay.
great.
So Greg's big thing is like, we don't know what needs to change for people to get better. Right.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. What mediates the healing process
exactly.
or the
Exactly.
lack of pain? Yeah.
Yeah. So someone comes in with shoulder pain. Um, you give them some strengthening exercises, their shoulder gets better, but then you retest strength and strength hasn't changed.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Or
Yeah.
you give them like special exercises to corrective exercises to change like kinematics and the way the joint is moving. Person gets better, but their kinematics don't change. Right.
Hmm.
So we've got a lot of data on this stuff. And that's to me, that's the big unknown in rehab is like we don't know what mediates and facilitates like someone getting better. So when you have these people that are like so certain with like this is the way and like these are the things that are mediating pain, that's when I get skeptical and like push back.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, definitely. But there's also something to be said of like the confidence that instills in people. Like when you say like
For
I'm going to do
sure.
this, I'm going to give you this treatment, and it's going to fix your shit. Like you're good to go after this. Like
100%.
that may have like some beneficial effects in itself. So it's like, but is that ethical? Like I don't know. Like it's kind of hard to say. Like, is it ethical to lie to people if it like improves their outcomes? Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm running up against because
Mm-hmm.
when I graduated from PT school, I was like hardcore skeptic, like to the
Mm-hmm.
very far end of the spectrum. Like everything we do is kind of bullshit. Like nothing really matters. Um, and when I would like talk to like patients and people in pain, I would be upfront and honest. I would say like, hey,
Right.
like we don't really know. Like I can't really tell you what the structure is. Potentially, we don't really know what's going to facilitate your healing. And it was this kind of like wishy washy statement.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was trying to be honest and upfront with
Yeah.
people, but then they would go to someone else, and someone else
Yeah,
would
the
tell
guy down the
them,
street who's like, yeah, I know exactly what it is. I can fix
"Yep,
you. This is exactly what you need to do. Yeah, yeah, for
yep."
sure. So
So
that's
like
rough for sure.
so it's really hard balancing this like
Mm-hmm.
how are you honest to patients and like upfront, but at the same time, like you said, instilling confidence in them
Mm-hmm.
to where they feel like they're actually going to get better.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that goes to coaching too. It's like athletes are like, hey, like, is this program gonna like improve my squat? It's like, honestly, like, I hope so, but like, it's
Yep.
or it's like, is this like the best program ever? It's like, it's a program, like it's just a program. I can't really predict exactly what this program's gonna do for you, but I don't know, like,
Yep.
we need to create the buy-in. So yeah.
100%. And that like the buy-in and the mindset it's such a huge part of both rehab and training.
Mm-hmm.
And like going down the training side of things, like you said, you can have, and I've experienced this with myself. I've experienced this with my athletes. You can have like the best program in the world, like individualized, well designed, uh, adaptable to like the athlete. And if the athlete doesn't
Mm-hmm.
buy into it and they're like
No,
not
yeah,
100% fired up and jacked up about it, they're probably not going to do that well. Versus
exactly.
you can
Yeah.
have any random program in the world. And if the
Mm-hmm.
athlete's like, this is fucking it, like I'm ready to go,
Right.
then like they're going to make progress.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's tough for sure.
Yeah, the mind is like our most powerful asset, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that honestly, what's that?
I was just gonna say, do you currently do any type of like rehab or like treating like people in pain, or is it mostly like performance based?
So I don't really. I try to kind of stay in my lane there. I'll do like return to sport, and then like if my athletes have like minor injuries, I'll kind of help. I'll mostly with load management, but I'll give them some stuff that kind of helps them feel better. But yeah, I try my best to stay in my lane. But the issue with that is that when I do send people to physical therapists, they come like, I mean, they come back just with saying the most ridiculous shit every single time, and
Yep.
it's just like I spent all this time trying to like unwork these narratives, and it's just all gone in an instant after I sent them away to somebody. It's yeah, that's definitely tough.
Yeah. Talk through that a little bit. So what's kind of what's an example of like take me through an example of like someone dealing with something, you give them the explanation, they go and like hear something different from the PT.
Okay, let's see. So I had one guy who was he was having some back pain. It was kind of he started having kind of radiating symptoms, which was a bit of a red flag. So that's why I actually sent him on. But we were just kind of doing the goal activity as a rehab kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
like just modulating the load and kind of doing what he could, doing kind of things around it, training around it, just kind of waiting for kind of natural history to occur. Then I sent him to rehab or to a physical therapist who started having those radiating symptoms, and he came back and just like full on like core stability, just like clamshells, like that's all I need. Like
Yeah.
can't bend my spine. It was probably caused by me bending my spine on a deadlift or something. Yeah, it was just like
Yeah.
because I really try to promote this narrative of like we are fragile, we are robust, like but yeah, that can be undone so quickly by like somebody who is in that position of authority, you know?
Yeah, 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 and exactly. It's like you're going to a doctor of physical therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, oh my, they must know what they're talking about. But
Right.
like I said, a lot of what like I learned in school, everything we University of Indianapolis where I went, they did a good job of acknowledging like, hey, this is what we're going to teach you guys. Like this is the stuff that's going to be on the board exam. A lot of it may not be evidence based, right? But we're going to teach you kind of like the traditional model. So they did a good job of acknowledging that like some of the stuff they were teaching us didn't have strong evidence behind it. But I don't think a lot of schools really do that. I think they just give you this like information. And unless you're someone that's going to go out and like, talk to other people or like read the literature, it's kind of hard to like flip that switch and
Yeah.
like get away from those narratives. So I still see, I mean, there's still chiros that are operating with the
Oh
subluxation
man.
model, right? That like
Oh,
the spine goes out of
The
place.
Cairo. Oh man. I get so many people who go to Kairos and they're like, yeah, I've got like they're on these like adjustment plans. They go like every few weeks to get their spines put back into place, and like
Yep.
their shoulders will hurt, so they'll go and get their shoulders like released or whatever. And like, yeah, I don't exactly know how to handle that kind of thing. I used to be
Yeah.
pretty bad about like the riding reflex where I just like immediately let me stop you right there. But I don't think that's like productive. So I usually will just be like, all right, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know how to. Yeah, if they ask me, I obviously will give my opinion on it. But I try to just kind of leave it at that. But I would, yeah, I used to be horrible about like just correcting everybody on stuff. I've
Yeah.
gotten much better about that. But
Same. I was in the same boat. Like someone
mm,
would come to me and say the same thing about something they'd heard from another clinician, and I'd be like, oh, like none of that's evidence based. Like,
oh,
and you're not doing the patient any service by
no,
doing that,
yeah,
right? Because like now they're just confused. Now they have two different
mm,
people telling them like two different things.
yeah,
So yeah, I've been really careful to try to walk a fine line with like if someone has seen another clinician and gotten like a different perspective to try to like respect that in a way
yeah,
while
kind of
also
incorporate
trying
that into like an evidence-based kind of explanation. Yeah,
exactly, which is
yeah,
tough. It's really tough.
hmm
So
yeah, yeah. I try to like kind of ignore it if it's not like horrible, like if it's not gonna actually like do them harm or like affect their training. I just kind of leave it. But
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but
it's rough.
at some point it's like when you hear people that are clearly going to predatory clinicians, right? Like
Mm,
I was at this CrossFit gym. I was coaching at this CrossFit gym, and this guy was like, "Oh yeah, I've got some back pain." I was like, "Oh well, are you doing anything to manage it?" He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to my chiro every week." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Is that helping?" He's like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess." And I was like, "Well, if it's helping, then like, why do you have to consistently go every week, right? Like,
right.
if it's working." And he'd been doing that for like for months or like a
Mm,
year. And to me, it's like, oh my God, dude, like you should not be giving this guy your money.
right.
If he's telling you need to come in every week to make sure that like you're staying in alignment or whatever.
Yeah, and the CrossFitters are yeah. Like I said, my bar local I run out of a CrossFit gym. They're horrible about it. Like they're doing like 9 classes a week, and it's like their back hurts, and they go to a chiropractor, but like zero change in like their load management, or they'll just like foam roll for an extra like hour before class so they can like get through it. Like
Yep.
they're just such like a mismanagement of like priorities. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about because we have pretty similar philosophies when it comes to like managing and like treating pain. So you touched on like load management.
Mm.
Um, which is pretty much my go-to, right? That's my first line of defense when someone's like dealing with pain. So talk through what that looks like for you. Someone comes in, or one of your athletes is like complaining of, let's say, like shoulder pain. What does load management mean to you, and what does that look like in terms of like adjusting their training?
So load management can mean kind of a lot of things. Like we think like load of the bar, but it can be like volume, intensity of the lift, range of motion. There's like infinite ways to kind of manage the load that we're placing on our bodies. How you implement that in training is just kind of see what they're doing that's kind of flaring things up for them, reduce that enough to the kind of you can kind of like Greg Layman's kind of mantra, like calm shit down and then build shit up again. Like so
Mm,
bring it down so the tissue has a chance to kind of reduce in sensitivity and then gradually build them back up. If you kind of hit the point where you've done too much too soon, you can titrate that back down and then kind of keep kind of titrating it over time. But it's kind of so like it sounds simple, but there's so many things that go into like what actually like what the meaningful loads are. Like there's like a is a like if we take like 120 kilos of load, like if I do 5 reps of a back squat versus a front squat, is it the same? Is that the same kind of load place in the body? If I snatch 120 kilos, if I do one solid rep where I feel good, and then another shitty rep that hurts, like that like really like tweaked my knee because I kind of caught it weird. Are those the same in terms of load? So like tracking things gets really weird.
mm,
In terms of like variability, like I could do like say like I've had it like I've had tons of like pain and stuff. A lot of like my learning about this is like scratching my own itch because I'm like
mm,
yeah I'm a mess basically. But yeah, so I'll have times where I can like snatch 120 kilos, but like cleaning 120 kilos like hurts, So like it'll hurt
mm,
my knees, So it's like how do you track that over time? They're like you kind of have these like week to week, you have kind of different changes in like what will flare you up. So like you're like the maximum volume that you're able to kind of like handle can be this kind of moving target. So it sounds simple, but it's really not as simple as it sounds. And a lot of what I'm currently using for like myself is just using kind of variability as a means of load management. So being able to kind of
Hmm.
load these structures, because like sensitivity is weird. Like it's like chronic pain. It's not like damage, you know. So it doesn't really have to make sense, and it doesn't. So like I'll be able to do certain activities sometimes that are fine, and other activities are going to flare it up. And then like that can switch. So I'll kind of have like these like buckets that I have, like a squat bucket. So like if a front squat, I'm not feeling that, I'll do a back squat instead, or like a goblet squat instead. That might feel fine, you know. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, I'm trying to. I've been leaning a lot more towards kind of like using variability as like a means of load management.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Um, there's something else I want to get into, but I before I ask that, I want to ask. So when you've got this like load management strategy for
Mm-hmm.
managing like pain, are you tracking like metrics? Like what are your KPIs or key performance indicators when you're like tracking this stuff over time?
So I used to be kind of more into the tracking metrics, but for the reasons that I just gave, it just gets really difficult. I'm sure like there may be a way to do it, but it's not just as simple as like tracking reps of like I can't just track reps of lower body exercises done like week to week, because like
Right.
that may like if I split those, if I just do like all back squat, for example, that might flare me up. If I do like say like 40 reps in a week of back squats, that could flare me up. Whereas like the next week, if I kind of vary it up and I do, let's say I do like 60 reps total, but I'm doing like back squats, front squats, overhead squats, like goblet squats, that could be fine, you know. Even at like the same loads. So
Yeah.
it's kind of tough to really track that. Like I think it's better. I think it's easier to track in the case of like an actual like tissue damage injury, like an actual like
Right.
traumatic injury, as
Like a
opposed to like
structural. Yeah.
chronic pain, because like that's actually like real, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, oh that's triggering. When I explain pain science to people, especially with like back pain, and I'll talk about how like there's observable changes in like how the brain processes pain, right? And like how pain is processed in the brain. And they'll be like, okay, but this isn't in my head. And I'm like, I'm not, well, I am saying it's in your head, but all pain is in your head, right?
Right. Yeah.
Pain is
Well,
just like, go
you
ahead.
need both. It's like an emergent. Yeah, it's like an emergent quality of like the entire organism. You need the
Yeah.
whole thing. You need both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's another struggle. I think
Yeah. Like.
so. I was the way that kind of I track, and it's not a perfect. There's no perfect system for like managing pain and injury. It's always
Mm,
individualized and should always be adjusted based on response. But I just track like pain intensity, right? And
yeah.
and volume of exercises. Generally, I try to use repeated exposure to like the same exercises. I like your approach a
Mm,
lot with like the variability, but I
mm.
think you're educated enough and you know your body well enough to be able to fine tune and like adjust
Yeah.
that
I don't do.
system.
I don't do this for my athletes. It's just like kind of what I've been doing, like playing
Yeah.
with myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're working with someone, I like someone a guy I'm working with, for example, who's dealing with some knee pain. We're squatting twice a week. We're doing front squats and back squats. And we've really kept the volume the same for like over the course of like a few weeks, and using like a
Mm,
slower tempo, because faster tempo obviously is more aggravating. And we're just tracking like pain intensity. So I'm saying, hey,
yeah.
what's your pain intensity during the exercise? What's your peak pain intensity like the following day? And we're using that kind of metric to just like track over time and see, at least give us some objective number for like, are we improving in some way?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, I wanted to ask you. So we talked about like when it comes to like etiology of pain, especially these like chronic kind of like we call them like overuse, like aches and pains, the musculoskeletal
Mm,
stuff that most of us deal with. What's your framework for like how these things come on? Because I've got my own framework for how I believe uh pain comes on, but I'm curious to hear like what your thought is on like what leads to the experience of someone experiencing an achy elbow or shoulder.
that's a lot. So
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's like the biopsychosocial kind of factors that all kind of go into like whether or not we're going to start to experience pain. So like, but I would just say like the biggest thing is going to be general accumulation of like stress wherever in someone's life that's going to come from. So yeah, just kind of like too much relative to their whatever their kind of like capacity to handle whatever you're giving them is. So like, and that can change. That can be a moving target. Like if they have like injury rates go up during exam weeks, you know, like so
Mm-hmm.
if they have like outside life stresses, it could be less. So you may not be able to necessarily like plan for it. It may not, even if you have like the perfect program, the perfect kind of periodized approach to your training, like you can't foresee these like kind of life events that individuals deal with. So yeah, anything that's going to be, yeah, anything you do that's going to kind of put them over that edge is where you're going to probably start to see more injuries. I think that there's a lot of kind of repetitive motion that can also kind of be a
Mm-hmm.
factor in that. Whereas like if I bench press every day versus like sometimes you dumbbell bench, sometimes you push ups, like you're probably more likely to kind of irritate those exact same structures in the exact same way every single time. So that could also be a factor in as far as like outside of like this just stress in general. But yeah, I think those are probably the biggest two factors. What do you think?
Yeah, no, so I agree. You're kind of describing like the cup of capacity
Yeah,
analogy,
exactly.
right? Like,
Yeah, like envelope function. Yeah.
yeah, envelope of function, exactly. So like for those that aren't familiar with it, if you've got like a cup that symbolizes your capacity, every stress you put in there is going to fill up the cup a little bit, right? So you talked about like training stress, that fills the cup, life stress, like emotional stuff. Everything is adding to that cup, and at some point it's going to overflow, right? So I agree, and I use that kind of same framework
Mm-hmm.
for like the etiology of pain, but I'm talking about more of like a like physiological. What do you believe is happening at like the structural, the neuromuscular level? Because we know that like with a lot of these things, we don't observe actual tissue damage, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah. Exactly.
when you look at like patellar tendinopathy, there can be disruption to like the matrix, like it can look really fucked up, but sometimes like that has been there for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't really change as a person starts to develop and experience pain. So like if there's not anything at least like
Yeah.
measurably structurally that's changing, why is this
Yeah.
person experiencing pain?
Yeah. So like
Right.
what is the difference between like the athlete pre-pain versus post-pain experience
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing? Yeah. Yeah. That's that question is definitely above my pay grade. Yeah, there are a lot of yeah, I think there are a lot of kind of theories on that. There's like theories about like hormones kind of like playing roles, different like chemicals in our bodies that kind of can potentially be kind of explanatory for these things. Yeah, yeah, I mean some interaction of like the whatever makes us humans, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is doing that. Yeah, I don't even. Yeah, at this point, I don't think anybody knows. I don't think that's
Yeah.
like a question that's been answered. I'm certainly not going to be able to do it right now.
I was just curious. I was curious whether you had
Yeah,
any
I
like any theories or like thoughts on
like
it.
pet theories.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I couldn't even begin to speculate. I have no idea.
Yeah, for me, like the way I think about it or kind of conceptualize it is like I put a lot onto kind of like the central nervous system, right? Like
Mm,
uh the central nervous system becomes sensitive for like some reason. And again, we don't know what that is. Could be like chemical, it could be it could be related to like load, right, like repeated loads going through the same tissues like you talked about. But yeah, the way that I kind of simplify it and like think about it in my mind is more of just like a sensitivity of the nervous system of saying like, oh
yeah.
hey, like you might get hurt if you keep doing like these same things over and over again, and especially if there's not like adequate recovery, or like your diet's crap. So yeah, to me, like, and I think this is like generally kind of accepted by pain science people that a lot of it has to do with like the way that like our brain processes pain and like processes
Mm,
these signals.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like contextual effect, like determines kind of like, yeah, what you like. catastrophization versus like somebody who kind of takes things in stride is going to have probably a worse pain experience. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
but
Yeah. Dude, pain is wild, man. It's
it's
crazy.
super weird. Yeah.
And we know like so little about it,
Hmm.
like I said. So,
Yeah.
all right, man, let's switch gears and let's talk about, like I said, I wanted to get into, the whole band discussion, banded
Yeah. Let's
cleans.
do it.
So I posted that video recently, and it was pretty clickbaity, right? Like I knew that like people were gonna get pretty fired up about it. But in the comments, I was like, I don't even prescribe banded cleans for my athletes ever. Just from like a logistical standpoint, like they're just a pain in the ass to set up, and
Yeah.
there's plenty of other things you can do that give you like a
Mhm.
great stimulus. But I have used bands in the past. I do see some benefit in using them. To me, it's just like a different variation. So what are your thoughts on like the whole banded Olympic lift debate?
Yeah. I thought it was like super interesting to kind of see people's emotional reactions to this exercise. Yeah. I think that I think it's kind of a cool litmus test actually to kind of see like I think if you're having an emotional reaction to like seeing a banded clean, like you need to like stop and reevaluate yourself.
For sure.
Um like you should not be that emotionally connected, like good or bad, really, to any exercise. I feel like it's just
Yeah.
like it's just a variation. But yeah, I think that a big issue in weightlifting is that we kind of have these kind of there's not a ton of research. There's a good amount, but there's not like a ton of research as far as like what is like the best variation for this. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of kind of heuristics we kind of have to go by. Like this is what this team did. This is what I've seen to work. This is what a lot of coaches kind of agree works, which is great. That's awesome. That's evidence based. That's like the practitioner
Sure.
part of like being evidence based in lack of like actual data. So, and that's fine to use as a heuristic, but I think we need to kind of have a strength of opinion that's reflective of like the strength of our evidence.
Hmm.
So I think that if you're having like really strong feelings about these kind of models or heuristics, I think that you're kind of putting too much stock into them. Um, so like for example, like I just like all the arguments I saw for like the banded cleans like or against them was like they're going to injure you, which maybe there's a little bit more potential for injury. I could see that. I guess I missed a few, and I did them out of I did like I worked up like 120 kilos out of spite the next day. Um, so I had some misses. I was fine, but I could see a little bit greater of potential for injury. Most people were saying things like my favorite team, or like no real weightlifting coach does this, or like no like
Hmm.
elite coach does this, which first of all is not an argument, and also like it's not true. Like
Hmm.
there's plenty of accounts of like Pendlay using these. So like, but also does not actually like reflect the merits of the exercise. Like just because like Team China hasn't used them doesn't mean it's not an effective exercise. And then what was the other one I saw? Oh, a lot of people think it's gonna like have this like negative skill transfer to actually like
Hmm.
snatching or and cleaning, which I think is just absurd. Like it's just like it's complete like completely outdated kind of look or like perspective on how we learn skills, how skills are acquired, and like motor learning in general. Like I don't like that's just not how that works. Like negative transfer of skills kind of pretty hard to do. Like
Hmm.
skills when you learn like variations of skills, it's usually kind of additive. Like it's if anything, it's either going to be like a net neutral or a benefit generally. Generally, like doing a skill that's kind of close to your other skill to another skill is going to usually degrade it, or
Right.
that some people think it will. So I think that's kind of a ridiculous argument, but yeah, I'm kind of the same as you. I don't have strong feelings about it one way or the other. Like I get I could see the use of it as a variation. I probably would never program it, just because like there are other things. Yeah, like you said, just logistically there are easier things to do. There's plenty of variations to use.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, the visceral reactions. It's like yeah, if you're having that, like you said, such an emotional reaction to something, you should take a step back and say, why? Right? Like,
Yeah.
and okay, I'll buy the like safety standpoint. Sure. There's no data on this, but I'm sure bands are probably marginally more dangerous
Mm-hmm.
than lifting a normal barbell. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy that side of things. But when you look at like So kinetically and kinematically, it's going to be different than a free weight clean, right? For sure. And like the motor coordination structure is going to be different because of that. Different muscles are going to fire at different times. Like, absolutely. But if you look at cleans from the blocks, coordination structure
Yep.
is going to be different than cleans from the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or hang variations, or like anything like that. Like compare a
Mm-hmm.
muscle snatch to a snatch from the floor,
Right. Yep.
right? All these things are like structurally, like objectively different in their coordination structure than the classical lifts. So if you're going at it from like a specificity standpoint, that it's too different from the classical lifts to have any skill transfer, I think that's bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
because there are all these other exercises and variations we use. And where do we draw the line with
Yeah,
specificity,
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
right? Are you going to be Bulgarian and only ever snatch and clean and jerk from the floor?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
do you use other variations?
Mm-hmm.
So again, to me, it's like, hey, I don't use banded cleans. I haven't done a banded clean in like over 5 years, but it is an option, right? And there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it should be shot down just on um, the grounds of like specificity or transfer of skill,
Mm-hmm.
like you said.
Yeah, I think it's just a lack of kind of like the systemic evaluation of like the value of things. I guess just like this very knee jerk, like, did my coach do this? Does the team I like do this? Is it super
Mm-hmm.
training? Not if not if no, then not a good exercise. Like it's just like this very like heuristic kind of evaluation of things as opposed to like kind of like systematically appraising like the actual like the value of it. And there are like plenty of like systems by which to do this. Like the like super training I think has a few like kind of like heuristics for where good transfer occurs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I get I think there's just a lot of like dogma and there's kind of a
Yep.
lack of like actual like real appraisal of the value of things a lot of the time. And you see that anytime anyone does anything, anytime a weightlifting coach does anything, it's like a little bit unconventional. I remember who was it that did like you remember the trash bags over
Yeah.
the PR
That
attempts? Yeah,
there's
people.
Will
What
Fleming, right?
was it?
Because he had Coach Mary doing that. I
Oh,
think
really?
Will had Coach Mary doing
Yeah.
like, yeah, like
Okay.
trash bag
Oh,
cleans.
yeah, but yeah, I just remember the comments were like just unhinged. Like
Yeah.
it's not that serious. It's just a trash bag. Like there's no trash bags in competition. Like what? What are you talking about, dude?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure,
So
man. And anything conjugate, man. Conjugate is so triggering, right? You do anything like
yeah.
West Side base.
Mm-hmm.
I trained with Louis. So I did like an internship with him right before I went to
Oh,
PT
that's very
school
cool. Nice.
in 2017. And then I would go back and like train with him as often as I could. And he was hugely influential on like my perspective and philosophy. And obviously I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of value in the kind of stuff they were doing. And honestly, man, like conjugate is not that far off of like what a lot of coaches do, right? There's a
Yeah, for sure.
generally like a heavy day throughout the week,
Mm-hmm.
right, where you're touching heavier percentages. There's lighter like speed days or like volume days, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when you look at high level coaches, generally like the differences are like pretty minute in terms of like
Uh, that's so true.
programs, but
Yeah.
people get so worked up about
Yes.
it. Like this is the
Uh-huh.
way. So
Yeah. Another thing is auto regulation.
mm,
Like people get super upset about like auto regulation, but like even like but every coach auto regulates. They all do it.
yeah,
Like no one's gonna see their athlete like just dying under like 85% on squats and like be like, nope, I programmed 90 today. Like no one would ever do that. Like,
right.
like everybody does auto regulation. They may just like may not formalize it, put it in all like the actual like program or call it that, but they all do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing I think it's funny. Yeah.
Do you
But yeah, like you
use
said,
go ahead?
what's that? Like you said, coaches are kind of doing all of these things already. They just like don't necessarily call it that, or don't really internalize
Right.
they are doing it.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, it's funny.
Do you use auto regulation in your training, or
Yeah,
how do you kind of structure it?
I'm super big on auto regulation.
Yeah.
As far as like the lifts, I use a lot of like the strength lifts. I use a lot of kind of RPE. I use a lot of for like bodybuilding. I usually use like RIR.
Yeah.
And then for the Olympic lifts, I kind of have this. I definitely I didn't invent this at all, but this idea I have is got like this kind of technique threshold. It's kind of this moving target.
Mm,
It's kind
yeah.
of like where we need to be. It's probably somewhere in like the 75 to 85% range for most things, but it's going to be this moving target where it's like challenging to kind of maintain technique, but not so heavy that it's light enough that you're still able to actually like consciously improve it and kind of play with it a little bit. And that's kind of like where I want to spend most of my time. And again, it's a moving target for people. So that's kind of like this idea in my mind of like, when you're doing this, I want you to like kind of find that threshold at which like it's challenging, but not so challenging that you're like throwing technique out the window.
Yeah, for sure. And do you use like undulating periodization, or like how do you structure like week to week?
So like I'm pretty, I guess it'd be like a conjugate kind of style kind of training where I kind of try to have a lot of qualities in at once. And then I'll emphasize one more than the other at different periods of time. So, but I try to train as many qualities as I can at a given time, just kind of in the background, because a lot of these things kind of take a long time. These qualities take a long time to develop. Like
right.
You're not going to experience significant hypertrophy in like a 4-week block or like even like a 12-week cycle. Like you're not going to, how much muscle you're really putting on. So like I like to kind of have these efforts like year round, to kind of just be pushing that as much as the primary kind of goal allows for. But so I'll have different kind of volumes and intensities kind of throughout the week, depending on kind of what the target is for the
for
cycle.
sure. Are you working with Quinn?
I did in the past. I'm not right now. I have worked with him for my pay. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I saw like he reposted you or you posted him or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Quinn's incredibly smart guy. He was
he's phenomenal.
I've known him since I think I met him in like 2015.
Nice.
He came and did like a seminar at the CrossFit gym I was at. I was like, this guy is like, he's got a really cool like philosophy and mindset. He's actually the one that got me interested in like going to PT school. And then I did some like mentorship with him like post graduation.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
But yeah, very smart guy.
Yeah, I love his stuff. Yeah, we worked together, kind of try to develop some strategies on kind of how to manage my own pain. So that's been super helpful for me, and just kind of getting me thinking about a lot of different things. But it just kind of giving me an even deeper understanding of the complexity of these things. He's been super helpful for that.
Yeah. What did that look like? Was that just like kind of like consulting, or like how'd you guys do that?
He like coached me for a while for like I think it was like a 6-month-ish period where he just like kind of coached me completely. And I just kind of did whatever he said. And we just kind of like it was pretty collaborative. Where we just kind of like we talked back and forth about a lot of these concepts and kind of came up with different strategies and tried them out and saw how they went. I would say like it helped kind of manage my pain. It's definitely still there, and I definitely will flare up if I piss it off again. But it's just more strategies to kind of help manage it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I'm trying to do with my athletes, especially the ones that have been like training a while, is trying to figure out ways to put more of the power in their hands as athletes, right? Because I think the job of a good coach is to educate the athletes and to let them start to understand the training process more on their own. And that way they can make good decisions, especially with like remote athletes, right? People that you aren't like there in person.
Right. Yeah. You definitely. Yeah. Cause I was a remote athlete for a long time, and you definitely need to like, you need to be able to kind of make these decisions that you normally you'd have a coach around to help you make. But you've got to be able to make them by yourself to kind of have that maturity. So definitely tough to do both as a coach and an athlete for the remote training. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like the vast majority of my coaching is remote coaching. And so that's like an issue that I run into. I think there's positives and negatives to like remote coaching. And we try to do with my athletes. Some of them do like weekly training calls where we'll literally set up Zoom like this, and like I'll be able to give them like immediate feedback.
Yeah.
We also do like no, like they'll actually lift like during the and I'll be able to give them like like immediate feedback on their lifts.
Nice.
But yeah, like generally for most of their sessions, they're not getting that immediate feedback. And the good side of it is they'll send me videos. I can go through each of their videos and like break it down and give them like thorough feedback, right? Which like if you're a coach in a gym, it's kind of hard to do that with like all the athletes you have lifting at the same time. So that's like in my mind a positive.
Mm.
is they do get that like really individualized, like thorough feedback. But then the negative is obviously not being able to uh, see them real time and make like adjustments on the fly and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely important that you like, yeah, to educate them on how to do that themselves for sure.
yeah,
Give them those kind of tools. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Going back to the whole thing when we were talking about like different philosophies. So I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this today. You follow John North?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he's love John North. He's a wild dude.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah. He's a good time.
little bit of a loose cannon, but
Yeah.
he's been posting a lot of stuff recently. And he had a post where he was talking about like his whole journey, and his journey has been like insane, and he's inspired
Mm.
like a ton of people. I think to like get into the sport of weightlifting. But he's talking about like how he was training 7 days a week for like 5, 6 hours a day, like sleeping in a van and like doing all this shit.
Mm.
And like his recent post, he's like, if you can't do this shit, then like you're not going to be like successful in the sport of weightlifting. Which is funny because that's like diametrically opposed to Olivia Reeves, who trains 4 times a week,
Mm.
eats like salads, and is like a full-time student, and she's our best weightlifter in the US
Right.
right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's like two different ends of the spectrum, in terms of like just like philosophy and like approach to training. And I think it just goes to show that like there is no right or wrong, right? And you need to
Yeah, for
find
sure.
like the way and like the method that works for you.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's definitely like subject to hindsight bias, where like whatever you did is what you're going to attribute to getting you there, where
for
it
sure.
may not have been that, you know. So like, there's no way of knowing. Like, there's no counterfactual to know like what would have happened if I hadn't done this thing. So it's
Yeah.
difficult to say in your circumstance, like whether or not that thing was actually was as instrumental as you may think it was to your success. You know.
100%. Yeah. And even looking like cycle to cycle, right? Like if you look back on all like your entire training history and you look at like, oh, this block I was doing this and I saw great results. And then this
Uh huh.
block I was doing something different and like it didn't work as well. And so like you try to repeat, like, oh, let's go
Yep.
back to like what I did. But it's like now you're older and now like you're in a different situation. And like there's no way that the variables are always going to be so different that
Mm-hmm.
there's no way to compare objectively, right? Like between the two.
Oh yeah, when I was newer, yeah, I had that experience where I had this incredible cycle where I just like I put like 10 kilos on every lift, and I was like, oh man,
Damn.
this is the cycle. Oh my god,
Yeah.
this is it. And then I went back and I kind of stalled out, and I was like, oh well, at least I had this cycle in my back pocket. Like I'm gonna put another 10 kilos on my lifts. It was awful. It was a
Yeah.
dog shit cycle, you know, like it was yeah. So yeah, that was very mind blowing to me at the time. But yeah, for sure, you never really know
Yeah.
what the exact circumstances that actually led to the success were. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I think it just as a coach, like it just takes reps, right? And starting to see like
Yeah.
patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and starting to see how different things work for different athletes and recognizing that like everyone's different. And trying to adjust like the program to the individual as much as possible.
Yeah. And also just being comfortable with that uncertainty that you
100%.
never are really going to know like 100% that like this is the cycle. This is the perfect cycle. This is exactly what they need. They're going to be doing this at this time. I think it's just really important to just kind of be reactive, have a general like idea of where you want to go. And the program needs to be like, it needs to be like good enough for sure, but there is no like perfect program. And so I think that reactivity is like huge as far as like adjusting on the fly. Don't be attached to the program. Like just have it as like a general rule of kind of how we're going to try to structure things, and then change it on the fly as you need to. I think is super important. Just not being super attached to like your program, and like when it's just not working for your athlete, being willing to change it instead of being like, well, according to Prevalent's table, this is what you know, like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was something too. I worked with Steve Fowler, Olivia Reeves' coach, when I was down in
Mm,
Tennessee. I was working with him for a while, and one of the things that really impressed me with him is how like non-dogmatic he was and how open
mm,
he was to like different things, because he's a very decorated coach.
mm,
And he sent kids to like tons of like international competitions, international medals and stuff like that. And he was always like, hey, let's try this, right? Let's see if this works. And like I would bring something up to him. I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, yeah, we can give it a shot. Like,
mm,
I'm open to it. So I was really impressed by like that openness to like trying different things and learning, even from someone who's had so much experience in the sport,
Hmm.
because I've had coaches on the other end of the spectrum where it's like, this is the way, right? Like you're following my
Right.
program, and I would give input and they'd be like, no, no, that's stupid. Like this is what we're doing.
Hmm.
And it's like, nah, that's you, just like you said, you have to accept the uncertainty, right? And accept
Hmm.
that like you do not have all the answers, and be willing to like adjust and like try different things.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah. I think it's incredibly important. Maybe like the most important. Like, yeah, I would if I could like rank like being able to put together like the absolute like perfect program with like all the right data versus being able to be extremely reactive. I would say that the reactivity is going to be much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's next with for you and your weightlifting career? You got any meets lined up here or?
Yeah, I'm like about a week out. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
really?
my first time competing in like over a year, almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I did this cut to I'm like 89 kilos right now, which is I'm 6'1", so it's like pretty small
Damn.
for me.
You're 89
Yeah,
kilos?
yeah, I cut from like 10. I was like 105, and it was like while I was kind of rehabbing stuff, and there's like there's something to do, you know. So I just was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll cut, improve my body composition a little bit. So I got down to like 96, and I was like, I feel pretty good. And I kept going, and then I was like, I'm gonna try out 89. So I'm gonna try it out. I'm gonna try and meet at 89, see if I can put anything together. But basically, I need to qualify for AO anyway because I haven't
Yeah.
competed in a long time, and AO is gonna be like in Fort Worth, I think this year. So
Oh, nice. Yeah.
which is like an hour away from me. So definitely
Yeah.
want to do that.
Nice.
So
What's
yeah,
the what are the goal numbers?
I honestly have no clue really where I'm at right now. 130, 150, I'd be stoked with, but we'll see where I'm at. My legs are pretty weak right now, so
Yeah.
we'll see if I can stand that up.
Well, you're gonna have to go. I think finals for 89 is 85, 285.
285. Okay.
Yeah, so you'd have to
Yeah.
go like,
Yeah. I don't know about that.
30, 33 and 50, 52 or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how I can do it, how I react to the cut. I really don't. Yeah. I have no idea. It was kind of like a fun little experiment for me to kind of see how I did.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not gonna put a lot of stock into it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see, and then I'll go
Nice.
back up after that to my new
Oh, so you will go back
weight
up.
classes. Yeah, this is just kind of an experiment for me.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just to kind of do
Gotcha.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a huge snatch, man. I've always been a clean and jerk specialist. So
Oh no.
I've done 162 at 89 kilos, and the most I've ever snatched is like 121.
Okay,
I
no,
think
I'm a snatch specialist. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure,
What are
for
your
sure.
best numbers?
Best in competition, 135, 160, and then I've cleaned and jerked 165 out of competition, but I've never put together a clean jerk, and I've snatched 140 once,
Damn, 140. Oof.
just once.
That's a big snatch. It's coming. It's
But
coming back.
but yeah, I've recently I hit 125 last week, and then I overpulled 130, so I think it's there. I get that. So
Yeah.
see where I'm at.
Awesome, man. Well, best of luck, dude. I'm
Thanks.
excited to see the results.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I
What about you?
I snatched 120 off the blocks yesterday, which is the first time I've touched that in like 8 months. And then
Nice,
150 is like, honestly, 150 is like pretty routine for me.
nice, nice.
uh but yeah, I also haven't competed in, I think the state meet in, it was like April of last year was like the last time I've competed. I've just had a lot of shit going on in the past year. So
Yeah,
training's kind of taken a back seat and really haven't had the opportunity to like compete, but hopefully I'll line one up here soon.
yeah, for sure.
So awesome, man. Well, we're about at the end of time here, but this has been a lot of fun. I think it's been very informative for me. So hopefully anyone listening in will find value in it. Any last closing comments before we finish?
Um, yeah, I just think that like this the the coaches you talked about who have this kind of open-minded attitude where they're willing to kind of entertain different ideas is like a huge benefit to a coach. I think it's super important to like kind of try to avoid being dogmatic where you are dogmatic. Try to kind of lean into that. Try to see why are you dogmatic. Find cognitive dissonance in like just find it, look for it, and when you feel it, like lean into it. Go down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
See what they actually are saying. Like cognitive, like if you feel that kind of dissonance where like something like kind of upsets you and like or makes you angry or like you have this kind of visceral reaction to it, it's probably a sign that you should probably like learn more about it.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that you just kind of like look for it. And instead of like reacting emotionally to that kind of dissonance, like try to understand it more. So
For
that'd
sure.
be my biggest advice.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think those reactions often come from a place of insecurity, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're very secure like in your beliefs and like why you do what you do, then when you see like opposing opinions, it's not going to upset you because
Yeah,
you're
and
like,
it's super
well,
easy. It's super easy just to like think like this is why this is not correct. Like this is obviously
right.
wrong for these reasons. Whereas like if you feel a need to like start like insulting people or like getting emotional, like
Yeah.
you like it's probably in lack of an actual argument against it. So you should probably like investigate that and either strengthen your position or like switch positions.
100%. 100%. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. This is a lot of fun and thank you for anyone listening in. We'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, really great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.